The effort to push for competitive environments, larger than life worlds for the sake of being big, and generic settings for the sake of mainstream appeal are everywhere in gaming. But these focuses overlook the driving forces behind video games' very creation and purpose. Fun. All those aspects are fun. There's nothing wrong with neutral colors for the sake of realism. It's fun to compete. Just because you don't like it doesn't make it bad. I know. Each one of these qualities can help a game absolutely shine. Using them as a focal point for design, though, usually does more harm than good. Because what is and always should be gaming's North Star gets lost in the pursuit. The fundamental question here is, what makes a game fun? Now, I have to fully recognize that that question may be the most subjective question possible. So let's refine it a little bit by splitting it into two parts. Pulling back the framework of a game is a good place to start. Realistically, it doesn't take much to make a game. In a literal sense, it's just a set of rules that you don't even need any material for. Go to any playground and you'll see this firsthand. Tag simply states that I touch you and run away until you touch someone else, and then repeat. Simon Says is just listening closely and following directions. Simple, fun, and playable for generation after generation. However, in these cases, enjoyment of these games are more about your interaction with the rules rather than the game itself. Tag would suck if you could only run in a straight line and your opponent was faster than you were. And Simon Says would get boring if the person playing Simon repeated the same actions over and over and over again.
Simon says hands on head. Simon says tap the head. Simon says...
Applying that to video games, if you had a fighting game with only 2 characters or a platformer with 1 level, the majority of gamers would lose interest rather quickly. But if scopes are narrowed and an engaging hook remains at the center of it all, there doesn't have to be much complexity in order to preserve the fun. Within the realm of fighting games, there's a title that takes simplicity to its extremes.
Divekick!
Divekick consists of 2 buttons, a jump and a kick. Because this is so limiting, there's absolutely no way it can be fun, right? Divekick succeeds at being fun because it understands what makes fighting games engaging fundamentally. It's not combo trees, matchup spreads, hidden tech, or even large-scale tournaments. It's the interactions with the person across from you at its core. The potential for a dominating win or a match decided by a single hit. It's the pop-offs, the trash talk, and the ability to improve each time the power turns on your console. All these hooks are still possible with just 2 buttons. You can still outplay your opponent with proper spacing and using your moves to bait the other person playing across from you into making mistakes. This preserves the ability for both drama and self-improvement with only 2 buttons. When Divekick was developed, it set out to achieve a goal that it shares with this video, to prove that complexity does not always equal fun. The people behind Divekick were disenfranchised with the state of fighting games at the time. As mentioned earlier, widespread combo trees and overwhelming character rosters are great for top-end complexity, but all this can leave newcomers out in over their heads when starting out.
Hello, my name's Adam Hart, lead designer on the Divekick project. If you're good enough, you can trick your opponent into feeling like they have no options, even though they have the same options you do. It can often be difficult for players new to the fighting genre to get to the point where they can enjoy the things that I've enjoyed for years. The problem most new players encounter is that even though they want to control their opponent, they can't control themselves. It takes a lot of practice to even be able to perform a Shoryuken correctly. And that's why we created Divekick. You still get to read your opponent, react to them, and absolutely dominate them, but you don't have to learn to do a standing 720 in order to play.
Of course, there's plenty of room for deeper mechanics, as evidenced by the default extensive mechanics in the rest of the genre. But there is space between the hardcore and the overly simple, and it's within that space where game design reaches its peak. Some of my favorite features in games are standalone experiences with challenge rooms or missions thrown in there as an added way to dive deeper into the mechanics. Personally, I love these types of challenge runs so much that I periodically produce a video series where I try to climb the top of leaderboards of whatever catches my eye, and I have only stopped recently to shift to longer form videos like this one. Admittedly, most games with features like that don't fit within what the average gamer plays and are mostly added on to single-player games. Single-player games, in of themselves, often fall victim to shooting for impressive scales instead of true innovation. Doing the same things in a larger world, more often than not, leads to a feeling of emptiness above all else. The large majority of games in the AAA space are made with the sole intention of having mass appeal. And so, they make safe artistic choices, including gritty or realistic settings, to avoid being labeled as a quote-unquote kids game, on top of realistic graphics and color palettes about as varied as a cardboard box. I wish that was a joke, but most high-dollar games just put filters over one another, which isn't all that much different than the box that refrigerators come in. Of course, there are some notable exceptions to this rule, and I, for one, would actually say that this aspect of single-player gaming has been improved drastically in the past probably 10 years or so. But the titles that shake that trend are few and far between Game of the Year winners. Fun also gets pushed to the side in multiplayer games when winning is prioritized over everything else.
And there he is, Nico exposed.
First place, the new Evo World Champion, Hungry Bob.
Far too often, though, there isn't an escape from this in large-scale multiplayer games for many reasons. With the rise of streamers that are paid to play games full-time, access to top-level techniques are easier to get to than ever. This means that if you don't have time to literally study and practice video games, the number of people that will laugh you out of the lobby is infinitely bigger than what it used to be, adding to the newcomer problem.
Dude, why is it that when I flash somebody, it's like I just slapped them in the face with a napkin from a little kid's birthday party? But when I get flashed, it's like some big...
When online gaming was in its infancy, you could hop into a new game and reasonably expect that everyone's in the same boat that you are, just learning the game. Sometimes this leads multiplayer games into becoming a confusing internal battle between training for an Olympic sport or just trying to relax while playing with your buddies, compounded by the fact that a lot of games communities allow this mentality to seek into the rare instances developers put into the games to give people a break from sweating so much. For whatever reason, sometimes the quote-unquote casual diversions put into some popular games like Random Heroes in Overwatch or Gun Game in Call of Duty can be filled with more drama than the standard experience. Granted, anything where players are placed on teams also puts part of the experience on others. A player lagging behind can not only cause consistent losses, but lead the opponent into having more resources to throw at you, making you have a bad time. But why on earth trash talk in modes intended for casual play? Like my dude, this random silly queue with about 100 people in it has really no competitively viable skills, and so why not let people try things that probably won't work, but at least they'll be fun? Into your computer with the hopes that it will cosmically reverberate to me, You shout,
Well, that's a problem with the people playing games and not the games themselves.
it's human nature to have some competitive drive behind everything that you do, so salty players have nothing to do with game design. Except it definitely does. And here's why. Problems arise when there's no escape from the core gameplay loop. In single player games, this takes the form of a lack of mission variety. Doing the same things over and over and over again can definitely cause you to lose the majority of the player base. In multiplayer games, this means that a lack of options and distractions can trap the player into a cycle of play, lose, and get blamed for said loss, and either spend time grinding or repeat the process. Take Firewalk Studios Concord as the most recent example. Unless your product is unique enough to wholly stand out and cater to a new audience, it better be super easy to pick up or have enough gameplay variety to stick around for more than 20 days. Otherwise, your player base is going to get more fun out of making memes. So, what does this all mean? Are we just destined to gamer rage at the lack of fun we're having, like some 12-year-old describing the different acts he would do to our mothers? Well, no. Beyond entertainment, but in life in general, you should always strive to be a part of the solution, not the problem. And so, how do we fix the problem at hand before the fun fades away forever? Start by demanding uniqueness in games. And I'm not meaning unique as in the type of game that you would find in the indie scene, as indies have proven for a long time that they're more than capable of innovating all on their own. I mean, demanding that AAA developers shake up their practices every now and then. And the best and most respectful way to do this is by voting with your wallet. If your favorite series has gotten stale because they haven't shaken up the formula since before you had facial hair, maybe it's time that you don't buy the next entry. And then use that extra time to look into some games that you might have otherwise passed, because odds are there's something that speaks to you out there somewhere. And if I may speak to some developers for a moment, I know that the job isn't easy, and that there's tremendous amounts of corporate pressure a lot of the times when it comes to making big budget titles. However, something that often gets overlooked is the successful games that establish the trends that you are chasing most likely got there with a fresh, new idea that was then expanded upon. I know it's wishful thinking to say that you should lead with the heart instead of chasing money, given the reality of the world that we live in. But if good ideas and concepts that are easy to grasp are backed by a strong and supportive community, the money will follow. And we could once again follow gaming's North Star into the future.